All right. Hope everybody caught the names of those bands in 370. We'll do our best to make sure you get the information. Fred's been having a little trouble with his connection, but we're heading over now to our second video. This is 371 for Fine Music with our musical traveler, Murray Thomas.
All right. Today I am continue zipping through the 20 albums that influenced my musical taste. Rather, subjective, arbitrary group of albums, but ones that I found very important. So we are up to, what number are we up to? We are up to
Nine?
Nine.
Yeah.
Yes, number 9. And number 9 is Horses by Patti Smith.
Yeah.
I was a big Doors fan, especially with Morrison's lyrics, especially on like When the Music's Over and Soft Parade, his longer experimental poems. But Patti Smith is the most, in my opinion, the best blending of rock and roll with poetry. I had, when I first heard this album, I had never heard anything like it, because she takes rock and roll classics like Gloria and Land of a Thousand Dances and infuses her poetry into them seamlessly. So her poetry and the song become one. And her version of Gloria is, I think, the best version you'll ever hear, but it's completely different from what Van Morrison did. And the same with Land, the epic closing piece, or almost closing piece on this, where she's telling a story possibly about some high school kid getting raped in the hallway, and blends that with Land of a Thousand Dances in the most amazing way. So this just opened my eyes to what can be done with poetry and music. And it's just a stellar album. Number 10, Marquee Moon by Television. Another stellar album. Television, came out of the punk scene, but they were not punks. They were kind of experimental, but very much a guitar band. Their whole thing of 2 guitarists, Tom Verlaine and Richard Lloyd, and how they interwove their guitar lines and wrote very surreal lyrics about basically nightlife in New York City. This totally turns me into, hanging out in Manhattan in the late 70s. Again, this introduced me to new possibilities of what you can do with guitar. Their guitar work on this is unlike anyone before, and anyone that comes after that sounds like this because they're influenced by this album. Okay, for number 11, I have to throw in a punk album because that was my music in the late 70s. It'd be really easy to throw in a Ramones album or the Sex Pistols, but when I really get down to it, it's this album, Young, Loud, and Snotty by the Dead Boys. It's not a perfect album. It's got some weak material on it, but for the alienated, antisocial adolescent, it's just perfect. And it goes back to what a previous album I talked about, Raw Power, in that the guitar by Cheetah Chrome is just amazing, like snarling, aggressive guitar work. In some ways more aggressive than, like I say, either the Sex Pistols or the Ramones. I did get to see the Dead Boys several times. I have a very firm memory. Okay, the lead singer, Stiv Bators, used to close out the show by hanging himself with his mic cord. I saw them in a club here that's no longer existent, but a club called the Penny Arcade here in Rochester. And they just didn't have anything in the ceiling that was strong enough to hold them. And he basically destroyed the ceiling over the stage to find something to hang himself with. Great classic punk moment. Of course, nobody in Rochester knew the hell they were. So the club was empty. I was one of the few people there really digging it. but Dead Boys, Young, Loud, and Snotty. And then we move on to my shirt here, Public Image Limited, with the album one. Well, this version is called Second Edition, but it's best known as Metal Box because it was originally released as three 12-inch 45s in a film container. And I think part of the thinking behind that was that you would not be able to get them out of the film container without damaging them. Perfect, John Lydon attitude thing. This is the album, I would say, or one of the albums that introduced me to the beauty of really noisy rock music. I saw them. In fact, that's what this T-shirt is from. And if we can get a good view of the back, I don't know, it's hard to redo it.
You got a view of the back there.
It was, I saw
Orpheum.
the first U.S. show at the Orpheum Theater in Boston. And in the middle of the show, I had this flash of intuition or understanding that they are trying to be as offensive as possible to chase as many people away, that John Lydon was really trying to push the limits of how, not bad, but just like annoying they could be and still hold on to a fan base. As you know, they have actually gone on to quite a long career, although the lineup that's on this album, which is Martin Atkins on drums and then Ya Wobble on bass, just an incredible dub bass player, and Keith Levine, who recently passed away, on guitar, another guitarist who didn't sound like anything before him. And I read it when he passed away. I read one of his obituaries that said he actually was a very talented, skilled guitarist, and he, again, purposely went out of the way to play guitar differently than anybody was. Very sonic, waves of noise, not so much tunes, but just sheets of noise coming out of him. So that one brought me around to noisy rock and roll. The next one of my favorite bands of all time, we'll get to it. Talking Heads, Remain in Light. Now, I really loved like their second album, more songs about buildings and food. And then, actually, I'll go back a step before that. I was a punk rocker. I hated disco. Disco was the pits for music as far as I was concerned. And then Talking Heads come out with the album before this, Fear of Music, and it's got tunes like I Zimbra and Life During Wartime that are really funky. And I'm just like, no, what are you guys doing? But this album, they dive completely into the funk sound, and I grew to love it. And it this probably combined with the Clash's excursions into reggae finally turned me on to funk music, or at least funky music. So that's what Talking Heads Remain in Light did for me. And also really solidified my liking for guitarist Adrian Belew, who plays on this a lot. And he comes up in the final one I'm going to do today, Discipline by King Crimson. Yeah. A new lineup of Crimson with, of course, Robert Fripp on guitar, but also Adrian Belew on second guitar and lead vocals, Tony Levin on bass. Tony Levin had played bass with everyone at that point, and Bill Bruford from Yes, and also one of the earlier versions of Crimson. Very experimental, taking music in very different directions from the original Crimson. This is heavily influenced by New Wave, because Belew was playing with Talking Heads and David Bowie. Levin was playing with Peter Gabriel. Fripp was actually before this had a New Wave band called the League of Gentlemen. And so it's very like the direct line from what I was listening to into this. Again, I did see them actually before this album either came out, and that ranks at the absolute top of my concert experience. And it's one of those where I have no idea what I'm listening to, and I'm just loving it and lost in the music. Very, very good improvisations, and also just the guitar play between Ballou and Fripp is pretty amazing. So discipline is, advancing my musical taste a little more. And just a little follow-up, this fall, a variation on this band is going to go out touring this album and the other two
Oh,
albums.
nice.
And it has Adrian Ballou, it has Tony Levin, it has, I can't remember his name, but the drummer from Tool as a drummer,
Oh.
and then filling it the Robert Fripp position is Steve Vai.
Oh, wow.
Anything about guitar you've probably heard of.
Whew.
So that's this fall, and I got tickets, so I'm really looking forward to that. But
Nice.
anyway, those are 6 more albums that influenced my current musical taste.
Those are good ones, man. All of them.
Thanks.
There's a great live version of 20th Century Schizoid Band by King Crimson on YouTube. It's just amazing. The precision on a live recording is just amazing. It's really, really good. And I love Elephant Talk on that album that you showed.
Yeah. So is the 21st Schizoid Man, is that recent, or is it?
I don't know. I'd have to look it up, but it's really, really good. I mean, those guys could play.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The only time I saw King Crimson was David Cross was playing violin in that group.
Oh, okay.
I think it was the album Blacklist Star.
Okay. Starless and Bible.
Yeah,
what
you said about the Dead Boys and Annoying. I revisited Viagra Boys during this past week, and I think I'm going to talk about them next week. It's like, I think every kind of rebellious kid goes through the stage where they play music that they know annoys their parents and the neighbors. And there's something fun about that. Sorry.
Marvelous rite of passage. Thank you,
Yes.
Murray. We're looking forward to your final installments. I see you speeded it up a little bit there, so that's cool.
Yeah. I don't want to spend too much
All
time.
right.
Want to go